بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In our previous discussions, we spoke about the different opinions on moonsighting and the horizons of the moon. And then we discussed relying on technology when it comes to determining the new month. And we said that scholars have discussed 2 points when it comes to relying on technology. The first that we spoke about was relying on the telescope in determining the new month. And I mentioned the different opinions about that with some of the arguments of each side. The second point, the second discussion that scholars speak about when it comes to relying on science in determining the new month is relying on astronomers to predict the new moon or to predict the moon sighting. So can we rely on astronomers in predicting the new moon or not? Because as Muslims, and specifically the followers of the Ja'fari school of thought, we pride ourselves in following a school of thought or a faith that is completely compatible with science. And the more knowledge we receive from science, the more science advances, the more we are certain, and the more it is proof for us that our school of thought, that our faith is divinely guided. Because it can't be just a coincidence that all the laws, all the Islamic laws that we have in the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt are just coincidentally compatible with science. This shows that such cohesiveness, such perfection, such compatibility with science can only mean that this religion, this faith, was brought from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why scholars have mentioned that anytime science gives us certainty about anything, then we can rely on science and Islamic law. If we want to determine anything that has to do with Islamic law, we can rely on science as long as science gives us certainty. So for example, scholars have said that when it comes to determining the prayer times, Salatul Subuh, Salatul Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, we no longer have to go and look at the sky to determine if the time of prayer has began or ended. We can rely on science. Why? Because it can predict for us the prayer times very accurately. Another example, when it comes to DNA, can we rely on DNA to prove the biological parents of someone? Scholars have said yes, because this gives you certainty. This is accurately predicted or done by science. So we can rely on science to predict the prayer times, to understand who the biological parents are. And the reasoning behind this, why scholars accept science in these situations, their justification is that science here gives us certainty. Science can predict these matters with complete accuracy, and thus it gives us certainty. And anything that gives us certainty, we can rely on it when it comes to Islamic law. So some scholars have said we should take that same principle, that same argument, and apply it to moonsighting. Now, with all the scientific and technological advancements, we no longer have to rely on archaic methods to determine the new moon, like sending witnesses, sending 2 witnesses, and then they have to look at the horizon. Only after those 2 witnesses spot the moon, we can have, for example, tomorrow as Ramadan or Eid or any new day of a new month. We don't have to rely on these archaic old methods when we have science. When science has advanced so much, why not just rely on science? So we can rely on astronomy to predict the new month. Now scholars have stated that the moon doesn't have to actually be seen by a witness in order for the new month to begin. No scholar has said that. What's important is for the moon to be visible in the horizon. And that's why they say if you know 100% the moon is visible in the horizon, tomorrow is the new month. So for example, if it's a cloudy day and we can't see the moon because the clouds are blocking our view, but we know 100% that the moon is there, it's visible, all scholars have said that tomorrow is the new month. So we don't actually have to see it. The point is it has to be visible on the horizon. As long as you know the moon is there, it's enough. So that's why some scholars have mentioned that we can rely on science, on astronomers to tell us, to predict if the moon will be visible or not. We don't have to send someone, because what's important is the knowledge, to know that it's visible. No one has to actually see it, and astronomers can tell us if it's visible or not. So why can't we rely on it? So the question is, can science help us in telling if the moon is actually visible or not? And here most scholars have mentioned that there are two facts that science can help us with when it comes to determining the new month. But unfortunately, both pieces of information are problematic. Why? The first piece of information that science can help us determining is the new moon. Science, astronomers, they can predict the new moon, correct? So the argument that you may post is, why can't we use science or rely on astronomers to predict the new moon? Why wait until it's visible and only then we know the new moon is born? Let us rely on astronomers. They can tell us the exact minute or second when the new moon is born. So the argument that someone could pose to further this view goes like this. That correct, the Imams did say in their hadiths, صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا أَفْطُرْ لِلرُّؤْيَا. Fast only when you see the moon. Break your fast, meaning it's the day of Eid, only when you see the moon. So the Imams did mention that the criteria is you have to see the moon, but why did they say that? Why? Because back then, there were no scientists, there were no astronomers. So the only way for us to know if the new moon was actually born is when we see it. Or else how would we know back then, 1400 years ago, if the new moon is born? There is no way. Because there was no science, no astronomers, the Imams obviously said when you see the moon, the new month begins. But we don't have to wait until we see it, because now we have science, now we have astronomers. If the Imam, this is how the argument goes, if the Imam was alive today, and he would see all this technological advancement of science and astronomers, he would say, you don't have to wait until you see it. Just ask an astronomer when the new moon is born, and that's it, the new month begins. So basically, the only reason why the Imam set this criteria, when you see the moon, is because there was no other way to know if the new moon was born or not. So this is how the argument goes. Some have posted this argument. Our scholars have refuted this argument. They have said, no, this is an incorrect argument. Why? They have said because this assumption that this argument makes, that there were no astronomers during the time of the Imams, there was no astronomy, no science, is incorrect. There were astronomers even during the times of the Imams. And they had the ability to predict the new moon even 1400 years ago. Even before that, if you read about the Greeks, more than 2,000 years ago, the Greeks had the ability to predict the new moon. Now, the only difference with then and now that we have, science has advanced so much, is that the new moon could be estimated or could be predicted with much more accuracy. Back then, you could be off by a couple of minutes. Now, they could predict the new moon to the second. But the point is, astronomers existed back then. And even then, the Imam did not say, go and ask an astronomer when the new moon is born, and whatever he says, tomorrow will be the first day of the new month. The Imam said, صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا. You can only fast, break your fast. The new month begins when you see it. So the Imam actually wants us to see it. It has to be visible. It doesn't matter if the new moon is born or not. So this shows us that even if an astronomer can predict the new moon accurately, it doesn't mean anything for us, because the new month does not begin with the new moon. Scholars mention the new month in Islam begins when the moon grows until it is visible on the horizon. And that usually takes anywhere from 10 to 20 hours after the new moon. So it's not enough the new moon is born. Even if I know, even if Jibreel comes down and tells me the new moon is born. So what? The new month does not begin with the new moon. It begins when it becomes visible on the horizon. And like I said, that takes anywhere from 10 to 20 hours after the new moon. So science does accurately predict the new moon. It does give us certainty, and we said anything that gives us certainty and we can rely on it. But the problem is, what science is predicting for us with certainty, with accuracy is useless. This piece of fact doesn't prove anything. So what if the new moon is born? So this first piece of information that science can accurately predict for us is useless. So then we could say this. Let us go to the second piece of information. Fine. Astronomers, they can predict the new moon, but this is useless, so we won't rely on this. We'll rely on a second piece of information. We can rely on astronomers to predict the visibility of the moon. Didn't we say that the criteria for the new month beginning in Islam is the moon has to be visible on the horizon? Astronomers can predict even that. They can predict that in your area it's visible or not visible on the horizon. And they can predict this months before, years before. So why can't we rely on that? Scholars have replied to this. They have said, yes, this is the right criteria. Predicting the visibility of the moon, this is what we need. But there's another problem here. What's that problem? The problem is the problem is with science itself, with astronomers itself. Astronomers themselves admit that when it comes to predicting the new moon, we can predict it with an iron fist, with great accuracy. But when it comes to predicting the visibility of the moon on your horizon, we can only make a guess. We cannot predict it with complete accuracy. So it's not with 100% certainty. So an astronomer cannot predict the visibility of the moon all the times with accuracy. They can give a guess, an estimate. Yes, 70, 80% it could be seen. And I spoke to an astronomer once personally, and he told me this, a Muslim astronomer. He told me that no astronomer can predict the visibility of the moon on the horizon with complete accuracy. It's going to be a guess, of course, an educated guess, but it could be off. So that's why we find sometimes astronomers say it could be seen, and people go to try to see it, no one sees it. And that's why we said that we can only rely on science or astronomers only when they predict something with complete accuracy, only if it gives us certainty. 60, 70, 80% of the time, that's not good enough. So since astronomers cannot predict the visibility of the moon with certainty, complete certainty, we can't rely on them because they are not certain themselves. So if we find some scholars, they have reservations or they are reluctant to rely on astronomers, it's not because they reject science. It's not because they are living in the stone ages. It's not because they are skeptical of science altogether. The problem is what science can accurately predict for us is useless. And what is useful, which is the visibility of the moon, they cannot predict it with accuracy. So let me rephrase this. Science can predict the new moon with accuracy, but the new moon means nothing. We need the visibility of the moon on the horizon. And when it comes to the visibility of the moon on your horizon, science cannot predict it with complete accuracy. It's only a guess. So that's why scholars have their reservations. But, however, scholars have said that if you on a personal level, on a personal basis, the predictions of a specific astronomer gives you certainty on a personal level, you can rely on it. You can rely on his findings, but it's a personal matter here. It'll differ from person to person. Maybe you consider this astronomer as very accurate, gives you certainty, you rely on him, but to me, no. It doesn't give me certainty. So it's going to be subjective. It's going to differ from person to person. And
I have a question.
yes, go ahead, brother.
Is this the ruling of all of the Maraja that we can use an astronomer for our own personal, or is this only some?
This is the ruling of most Maraja, and specifically Sayyid al-Sistani mentions this. He mentions that you can rely on the predictions of an astronomer only if you are certain that he's accurate, that he won't mislead you, that there is no room for error, no room for doubt. If you are sure of this, Sayyid al-Sistani clearly says, you can rely on that astronomer. But however, he himself says, me on a personal level, Sayyid al-Sistani, astronomers, their findings, they don't always give me certainty. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And that's why you see sometimes Sayyid al-Sistani does rely on the findings of astronomers. Other times no. It just depends. It depends on the astronomers. It depends on their guess. Is it close? Is it close to 100%? Is it far? So there's many factors that he takes into consideration. But he clearly says, if there is an astronomer that you rely on, you find this guy is always on the dot. He's perfect. Whatever he says, his findings are always, true, then you can rely on him. But however, you can't force other people to rely on him. It becomes a personal matter. Yes, to me, I think he gives me certainty. I think he is his guesses, his predictions are usually accurate. But if anyone else disagrees, fine. It becomes a matter of opinion here, because it's not something that the astronomer himself can claim that I always predict with certainty. If science reaches a state where the predictions of astronomers reaches 100% when it comes to the visibility of the moon, all scholars will rely on them, just like they rely on the predictions of astronomers when it comes to the timings of prayers. So the only reason they rely there with prayer timings and they don't rely on the visibility of the moon is because science still hasn't reached that level of certainty where we can rely on them. Yes, is there a question? Yes, go ahead.
The hadith of صوموا لرؤيته وافطروا.
Yes.
What do you do with that?
What do they do with that?
Yeah, because that hadith by itself, it tells you that you have to visibly see it rather than just rely on scientific.
No, I mentioned, if you remember, I mentioned all scholars say that you don't have to actually see it. There doesn't necessarily have to be a witness. And that's why I mentioned, all the ulama mention, if there is clouds on that day, but we are sure, now how, doesn't matter, we are sure 100% that the moon is there, it's right there, it's there and we could see the crescent, but there's this cloud that's preventing us. Can we say tomorrow is the new month? All ulama say yes. We don't actually have to see it with the eye. When the Imam said صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا وَافْطَرْ لِلرُّؤْيَا, ru'ya, he means the moon is actually there and it can be seen. So as long as it can be seen, meaning it's there on the horizon, we can consider tomorrow as the beginning of the new month. If there is something blocking it, we can't say that tomorrow isn't the new month. If we know the moon is behind the cloud or whatever is blocking it. So the ulama, they say صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا وَافْطَرْ لِلرُّؤْيَا. Doesn't necessarily you have to see it. The point is you have to know it's there on the horizon. Meaning as long as there isn't any obstacle, I could see it. So this is the tafsir that the ulama give to صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَا وَافْطَرْ لِلرُّؤْيَا. Or else, based on your interpretation where someone actually has to see it, then if there are clouds, but we are sure it's there, we can't consider this the first day of the month. and no scholar has said this. They have said, as long as you have knowledge that the moon is there, it's visible, it can be seen, tomorrow is the first day. It doesn't necessarily has to be seen. What's important is that it can be seen. So that's why, based on this, we can conclude that if an astronomer can predict with 100% certainty that the moon can be visible on your horizon, you can rely on that. And like I said, As-Sayyid As-Sistani, he clearly mentions this in his istifta'at, in his books. Is that clear?
I'm still, because you have people that have to go and look for the moon and they have to have a witness that they saw it. Where does that all fit in there? So there's no need for people to go and look for the moon and to have a witness if we know scientific evidence is enough by itself.
Exactly. The reason why we need witnesses is because there is no way for us to know if the moon is visible or not. How would I know if the moon is visible on the horizon tonight? I have no way. So if astronomers, they could predict with 100% certainty, why do I have to rely on witnesses? Do I have to rely on a witness to tell me that the sun has risen, the sun, it's sunrise, and then khalas, I can't pray Salatul Subuh? Do I have to, rely on a witness to tell me that? No alim says that. Because astronomers now, they can predict the sunrise with 100% certainty. There is no room for error. Every alim will tell you, you don't need to rely on a witness. Khalas, as long as you know, you have ilm, you have yaqeen, you have certainty that the sun has risen already, you can rely on that. The same thing they say about the moon. The sun and the moon, it's the same thing. If the moon is over there, I know it's there, but I can't see it because there's a barrier. There's an obstacle. So it can be visible, but there is a cloud. Every alim has said that. If there is a cloud, that doesn't mean you can't rely on it. So, صوم للرؤية وافطر للرؤية, the reason why the Imam said you have to see it is because there's no other way to know if it's there. How would I know if I don't see it? How would I know it's visible? If science progresses and it can tell us with 100% accuracy that no, it is there, it will be there, 100%. 100% meaning there's no room for error. Then why wait for a witness? What's the difference between a witness telling me that it's there or science telling me that it's there? But as long as science can predict the visibility, remember, not the new moon. The new moon is useless. Visibility of the moon in your horizon, in your area, 100%, every alim will accept that. They haven't accepted it now because astronomers cannot always predict it with 100% accuracy. So now that we have understood the different opinions and the different views on moon sighting, now I will move on, inshallah, to another discussion, and that is organ donation. Because remember, our topic, our subject for this class is contemporary jurisprudence, issues and laws that did not apply during the times of the Imams, but they apply now. So amongst those issues or laws is organ donation. Are we allowed to donate our organs or not, Islamically? Is it halal? Is it haram? Is it recommended? What is the ruling concerning organ donation? Now, I have to set a few things straight before we mention the different views. Number one, most scholars, they say that a Muslim is allowed to take organs, any organs from a non-Muslim. This is almost a consensus. I can't say 100% because I have not reviewed all the views of all the maraja. But majority of maraja say for a Muslim it is okay for him to take the organs of a non-Muslim without any conditions. Any organ, anytime. So that's number one. Number two, likewise, most maraja, most scholars agree that a Muslim can donate a non-vital organ, like a second kidney that he doesn't need, or tissues, for example, or donate blood. These are non-vital things. He can live without them, the human being. He can donate them to anyone, whether that person, the recipient, is a Muslim or whether he is a non-Muslim. As long as donating this specific tissue, blood, or organ does not harm him. So donating blood doesn't harm me. Donating tissues doesn't harm me. If I have 2 healthy kidneys, I can donate a second kidney, and as long as it won't harm me, I can donate it to anyone, to a Muslim or non-Muslim. There is almost a consensus on this also. So these are 2 points. There isn't any disagreement on this. The area where there is a lot of disagreement and controversy is this, and this is where scholars have disputed. Is a Muslim allowed to donate his organs after he dies or not? So the one that we mentioned, non-vital organs, this is all while I'm alive. I donate my kidney that I don't need. I donate blood, donate tissues. I can donate all these things while I'm alive. But the question is, after I die, am I allowed to write in my wasiyyah, in my will, that I want my organs to be donated? Can I, register with the organ donor registry? Can I register that after I die, take my organs and give it to whoever needs that? This is where the scholars have disputed. And here there are 2 main views. View number 1 is those scholars that say you're allowed to donate your organs after you die, so you can write that in your will. You can donate it to anyone, Muslim or non-Muslim, unconditionally. Yes, write in your will, I want to donate my heart, my kidney, my lung, my liver, my eye, anything that could be donated, that could be used by someone else, you can write that in your wasiyyah, whether the recipient is Muslim or non-Muslim. This is the first view. The second view of the ulama is that you're only allowed to donate. You can only write this in your will. You're only allowed to donate to number 1, a Muslim. The recipient can only be a Muslim. So you cannot donate your organs after you die. It cannot be given. They cannot be given to a non-Muslim. That's the first condition. The recipient has to be a Muslim. And the second condition is the Muslim can only take the organs if his life depends on it. So if it's not a life-threatening situation, the Muslim recipients cannot take the organs of a dead Muslim. So I can only give my body parts or organs after I die to a Muslim if his life depends on it, with these 2 conditions. So now that we understand the 2 views, I will go into some of the arguments. First, I will begin with the first view. The first view is you're allowed to donate after you die your organs to anyone without any conditions. I'll mention 2 arguments. The first argument that they have used is this. They refer to a general law in fiqh, in jurisprudence, that says, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ لَكَ حَلَالٍ حَتَّى تَعْلَمَ أَنَّهُ حَرَامٍ. Everything is halal until proven otherwise. So the default state of everything is it's halal. The only time I can say something is haram if I have proof from the Quran, from the Sunnah of Rasulullah, from Ahlul Bayt that it is haram. So if I search in the Quran, I search in the Ahadith, I don't find any proof, any evidence that such an act is haram, then it will automatically be halal. So like I said, the default law is that everything is permissible until proven otherwise. So these ulama, they have said, when we go to the Quran, when we go to the Sunnah, we don't find anything that prohibits organ donation. And thus, there's no reason for us to say it's haram. Yes, it's halal. Donate it to a Muslim, to a kafir. Why would it be haram? There's no proof to show that it's haram. Now you may object and say, well, obviously there won't be proof because this matter did not exist during the times of the Imams, correct? We're speaking about contemporary fiqh, issues that have, that have risen in this new age. So during the time of the Imam, there is nothing in the Quran and the Sunnah because it did not apply to that time. There was no organ donation. So how could we find proof, a ayah or a hadith that is saying organ donation is haram or only to a Muslim? It didn't apply back then. So how do the ulama of this first view refute this argument? They say it doesn't matter. As long as there is no proof that there is something haram, it's halal. Even if it was not applicable back then. The Quran, the Imams could have said a general law, it's very general, that could apply to all ages, to new laws that will come in the future. Even though it won't say organ donation, but the Imam could have said, he could have worded it that the body has sanctity and whatever, and it cannot be touched after someone dies and whatnot. So as long as there is nothing in the hadith, in the Quran, to prove that it's haram, the default state is it's halal. So this is the first argument they use. The second argument, these ulama that say you can donate after you die to a Muslim, to a kafir, is a hadith of Al-Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Who narrates this hadith? Al-Husayn ibn Zurara. Zurara, that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, was one of the greatest companions of Al-Imam Al-Sadiq and Al-Baqir. His son, Al-Husayn, his name was Husayn, the son of Zurara. He says this. He says, سأل أبي وأنا حاضر عن الرجل يسقط سنه فيأخذ سن إنسان ميت فيجعله مكانه قال لا بأس. Al-Husayn ibn Zurara, he says, one day, me and my father Zurara, we went to see the Imam, Al-Imam Al-Sadiq, and my father Zurara asked the Imam this question. He asked him, if a man, a man, loses a tooth, and after he loses the tooth, he finds a dead person, who obviously he's dead, he doesn't need his teeth anymore. So can he take the tooth of that dead person and use it for himself? The Imam said yes, he can do that. So the ulama have said, if it is allowed for someone to take the tooth of a deceased individual, listen carefully, brothers and sisters, this is very precise. They say if, according to Imam Al-Sadiq, you can take the tooth of a deceased person, then that means that deceased person could have donated it to you before he died. He could have wrote in his will that after I die, I want to donate my teeth to to my friend Ali, to my friend Muhammad, or whoever needs it. Since the Imam is saying you can take his teeth without his permission, so obviously he could have wrote it in his will that whoever wants to take my teeth, they could have, correct? I mean, it's obvious. If the Imam says you can take his teeth even without him asking, then he could have willed it. He could have donated it. He could have said, when I die, I donate my teeth. So this hadith is indirectly proving that you can donate your teeth after you die. So this is number one. Number two, the ulama say, the second indirect thing we can understand from this hadith is, if you're allowed to donate your tooth, you can donate any other body part. Why? Because they all share the same point. You don't need them. After you die, what's the difference between your tooth, your eye, your heart, your lung, your kidney, your tissues? You don't need any of them. When you're alive, there's a difference. You don't need your tooth, you can live without it. But you need all these vital organs. That's when you're alive. But after you're dead, you don't need all of them. So if the Imam says you can take the tooth, you can take the heart, you can take anything. Because you don't need them, he's dead. He's going to decompose in the grave. And the ulama say that Zurara, he asked, an rajulin. Rajul means a man. Can a man take the tooth of a deceased individual? So the Zurara used the word a man. He didn't say a Muslim. So even if that man was a kafir, he can take the tooth of a Muslim. That Muslim could donate it to the kafir. He did not indicate if it's a Muslim, kafir, and the Imam didn't indicate. The Imam just said it generally, yes, it's okay. So any man can take the tooth of any dead man. The dead man is Muslim, kafir, doesn't matter. The person who is taking the tooth is a Muslim, kafir, doesn't matter. So if we said we indirectly understand from this hadith that you can donate your tooth, that means you can donate your tooth to a Muslim or kafir. if we understood from this hadith that you can indirectly, you can donate all your body parts after you die, then you can give them to a Muslim or kafir, because the Imam didn't set a condition. As long as, Ya Zurara, as long as he's a Muslim, you know what? He can take the tooth. So as long as the Imam didn't, say it has to be a Muslim, why do we have to bring this condition? If he's a Muslim, he can take the body part. No, the Imam said take the tooth. A man could be a Muslim or kafir, correct? Now, some have objected to this argument. They have said, look, Zurara is asking about a Muslim, obviously. When he says, an rajulin, a man can take a tooth of a deceased person, he's not talking about kuffar, he's speaking about Muslims. Why? Because Zurara is a Muslim, and he's living in a Muslim society back then. There's no kuffar. So any question he would ask, any narrator, when he asks something, even though he says rajulin, a man, he's not speaking about someone in China, someone in the North Pole. Obviously, he's asking about someone in his environment, in Medina and those areas, his people. So obviously, it won't include a kafir. The Imam gave permission to take the tooth as long as you're a Muslim, because he's asking about a man that took the tooth. And a man will apply only to a Muslim, because there was no kuffar in that society. Now, this argument has been raised. But however, we can refute this argument by saying that there were kuffar in the Muslim nation. There were Ahlul Dhimma. Ahlul Dhimma were those Christians and Jews who lived under a Muslim state and they obeyed the law. So there were kuffar. We can't say that, even in Medina there were Jews and Christians that lived. So this objection that a man only applies to a Muslim is incorrect. So, to summarize, what we understand from the second argument is the Imam said you can take the tooth of a deceased person. The ulama say tooth, all other organs, same thing. You don't need all of them. So if the Imam gave you permission to take the tooth, that means you have permission to take any other body part. That includes the lung, the heart, the kidney, the liver, and so on and so forth. The Imam didn't say you can take it as long as you're a Muslim and the deceased is a Muslim. No. The Imam said anyone can take from anyone. He didn't say that. But because he set no conditions, then that means it's a general law. So this is the second argument that the ulama rely on. They rely on this hadith from the Imam, even though the Imam spoke about only the tooth. But we can understand a more general law because there's no difference between tooth and lung and heart after you die. It's all the same. So this is the second argument that the ulama use to say that you can donate your organs to anyone, Muslim or kafir. We said the first view, you can donate any organ after you die to anyone, Muslim or kafir. The second view, you can only donate your organs to a Muslim if his life depends on it. Why? What's their justification? Two arguments. Argument number one, these ulama, they say that your body is a amana, is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have authority over it as long as you're living. Yes, as long as you're living, your body is yours. Do whatever you want with it, as long as obviously you don't commit suicide, you don't harm yourself, do great harm. You can do whatever you want as long as you're alive. After you die, the body goes back to Allah. You don't own it anymore. The Quran says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To Allah we belong and to Him we go back. So after I die, I have no authority over my body to say, give my lung to this one, to this person, give my heart. No, you don't own it anymore. When you were alive, it was yours. You benefited from it. Now that you died, the spirit has left the body, the soul has left the body. You don't have authority over the body. So how can you write in your will, I want to donate to this person and that person, when you don't even have authority over your body after you die? Thus, since technically my body is not my property, I have no authority to donate my organ to anyone, since it's not mine anymore. So I can't donate something that I don't own. Now, some ulama, they have worded it a little differently. They have said that, we can't say for sure you have no authority over your body, but what we can say is we don't know if we have authority over our bodies when we die. You see, this is a less extreme version. The more aggressive version says you have no authority over your body after you die. Some ulama, they have said, we can't say for sure that you have no authority over your body when you die. But what we can say is, we don't know if we have authority over our bodies. And as long as we don't know if we have authority over something, we cannot touch it, we cannot, deal with it. We cannot donate something. If I don't know if this, for example, if this cup is mine, if this cup of water is mine, I can't tell someone to drink it. Only when I know it's mine and I have authority over it, I can donate it to someone else. So this is what they have said. So then comes this question. So why did they say that it is okay for you to donate it if he's a Muslim and his life depends on it? If I don't own my body, I have no authority. Even in that situation, I cannot give it to anyone. Correct? Scholars have said that even if the Muslim did not will, even if I did not write in my will, take my heart, take my lungs, I died. A Muslim's life depends on my heart. The doctor is allowed to take my heart even if I have not willed it. So willing it or not willing it won't add too much. Why? Their justification is that, look, it is like the brother mentioned a few minutes ago. The body has sanctity. It's haram to cut the body of the human being and take out an organ, whether he is alive or dead. When he is alive, it's obvious. Even when he is dead, he has the same sanctity. I can't just come and cut up the body of the human being. This is violating his sanctity. And I'll read you a few hadiths they say proves this. One hadith is narrated from the Holy Prophet ﷺ. He said, حُرْمَةُ الرَّجُلِ الْمُسْلِمِ مَيِّتًا كَحُرْمَتِهِ حَيًّا سَوَاء. In this hadith, the Prophet says the sanctity of the human being when he is dead and alive is the same. So don't think he's dead now, he's just, he's going to decompose, let me just cut him up. No. If he was alive, would you cut him up? No. Don't cut him up when he's dead. He has sanctity. You can't touch his body. Another hadith, the narrator asks, Imam al-Sadiq, سألت أبا عبد الله عن رجل كسر عظم ميت. He says, I asked if someone broke the bone of a dead man. Is it just a dead man? Who cares? Look at what the Imam says. فقال حرمته ميتا أعظم من حرمته وهو حي. The Imam says his sanctity and honor when he is dead is greater than that when he is alive. Can you just go and break someone's arm when he's alive? Of course you can. Then you can't do it when he's dead. It's a worse sin, the Imam says. It's even a greater sin. In another hadith, that Imam al-Sadiq said,
that hadith that you just mentioned, was that from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, was that for a Muslim or a non-Muslim or just any human?
The Imam did not make it clear. The narrator asked, عن رجل, a man.
Okay.
If a man breaks the bone of a dead person, عن ميت, he says. So, like we said, you can argue that he's asking about a Muslim because the environment is all Muslims. You can argue against that. There were Ahl al-Dhimma, Christians and Jews. So, the point is, look at the answer of the Imam. He says, if a being has sanctity when he is alive, he will have sanctity when he is dead. So, from this we can understand, a kafir, does a kafir have sanctity or not? Ulama have said if he is Ahlul Dhimma living under a Muslim state, yes, he has sanctity when he's alive, right? You can't just go and kill him and take his money and whatever. He has sanctity, has honor. So if he has sanctity and honor when he is alive, he will have even more sanctity when he is dead. So this does include the kuffar, obviously. So if I break the bone of a kafir, the Imam says this is a greater sin if he's dead. This is a greater sin than if I did it when he was alive. So this proves what? That the human being has a lot of sanctity, great sanctity when he is dead. You can't just go cut him up, break his bones. And another hadith from Imam al-Sadiq.
And they're just living like the people who are our neighbors and they work with us and they're friends with us. We're not living in a Dawlat Islamiyah.
No.
So what about the verse of وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ?
No, Ahlul Dhimma, they're only the Christians and Jews, people of the book that are living under a Muslim government. So,
Right.
the kuffar that are not living under the Muslim government, that are living in their own countries, this is a lengthy topic in itself. Ulama have disagreed. Some have divided them into two parts. One is those, the muharib, those that consider Muslims as their enemies and they are at a state of war with Muslims. Obviously these persons have no sanctity because they consider us as enemies. And the second are those that know. They are the mu'ahadun, those that have they respect Muslims, they have a peace treaty or whatever with the Muslim countries. These kuffar, these non-Muslims, then no, they have to be respected and they have honor and dignity. So it's only the kuffar that are muharib, the ones that are fighting against the Muslims, the ones that consider Muslims their enemies. So it's basically common sense. I mean, someone that wants to kill you, that wants to fight you, that considers themselves at war with you, these persons have no sanctity. But all other kuffar Christians, like the ones living in the West, they don't consider us, Muslims as enemies and they should be killed. So these people have sanctity and they have honor. Yes?
What about in the Battle of Khandaq when Imam Ali Islam he killed Amr ibn Abdul Wud, and Rasulullah said that this is the epitome of Iman and that's the epitome of Kufr, but still Imam Ali Islam left his body alone, left all of his armor intact, left all of his jewels and everything on the armor?
Yes. Now, with the story of Khaybar, or with all the actions of Imam Ali, what we have to understand is not necessarily everything that Imam Ali didn't do, it was because it was haram. Because remember, Imam Ali has a much, much higher standard. The Imam knows that he's a role model, and for thousands of years, his followers will look at his actions. So it doesn't mean because he didn't do something, it was haram. No, the Imam, has a very high standard. Even if it's halal, he doesn't want to do it. Now what we do have in our ahadith is al-muthla is haram. Mutilating the body of an enemy is haram. This was one of the words. Actually, this is the fourth hadith that I was going to mention it. Let me just mention it right now. Imam Ali alayhi salam, before he died, when he was struck by Ibn Muljam and his sons were around him, when he was giving his final wills to Imam Hassan, Hussein and his other sons, when he was asked what should we do with Ibn Muljam, the one who killed Imam Ali, he said if you could either forgive him or if you want retribution, if you want justice, then you can strike him one strike just like what he did to me, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So just like how he struck me, you can strike him. And then the Imam said this, فَإِنِّي سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ يَقُولُ إِيَّاكُمْ وَالْمُثْلَ وَلَوْ بِالْكَلْبِ الْعَقُورِ. He said, do not mutilate his body. You can't, after he dies, mutilate his body, because I heard the Holy Prophet say, do never mutilate any person's body, even if it was a dog, a stray dog. So even if it was a dog, I see it's a dead dog laying on the street, I can't just go cut up his body, mutilate it. The Holy Prophet prohibited us from doing that. So it is haram to mutilate the body of an enemy in the battle. That's why Imam Ali would never mutilate. Now, was the Imam was he allowed to take the booties of war? Of course he was. Because this is a verse in the Quran. The verse of Khumus. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا or فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ. This was a practice that Muslims always did. When they would defeat the enemies, they would take their possessions. But you cannot touch the body, because you have to allow his family members to have a proper burial. So this is a different situation. What we're saying here is that if the person had sanctity when he was alive, then he will have sanctity when he is dead. So our topic is what? Is a Muslim. So can we just go cut up the body of a Muslim and take his organs? No, because a Muslim has sanctity when he's alive, he has sanctity when he's dead. So this is what the ulama have said. Essentially, it is haram to touch the body of a dead person, right? It is haram to touch the body of a dead person. So why did they say, if another Muslim's life depends on my kidney, we can just come and cut the body and take the kidney? Why? On what basis? If it's haram to touch the body, it's haram to mutilate it, to cut it up because he has sanctity. These ulama have said, look, At the same time that it is haram to cut the body of the Muslim, dead Muslim, because he has sanctity, it is also wajib, mandatory, to save the life of that second Muslim, isn't it? He's dying, he needs a heart, he needs a kidney. We have no kidney except mine, who I died. So it is wajib to save that second person's life. And the only way we can save his life is if we take my kidney. So here, if we take my organ after I die and we give it to that second Muslim whose life depends on it, this would be haram from one side because we would be violating my sanctity, but wajib from another side, from another perspective, because we'd be saving another human Muslim's life, correct?
Yes.
So these two laws would be in conflict. You have one action, it's haram from one side because you're violating the sanctity. It's wajib from another side because you're saving another person's life. One law, it's one act, but two laws are in conflict, haram and wajib. This is called at-tazahum in legal theory. I don't know if any of you are taking legal theory or will. Anytime we have two laws that are in conflict, what do? We give the priority to the more important one. Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm walking down the street one day and I see someone who's swimming in his private house and he's drowning. He's calling, help, help, I'm drowning, I'm dying. It is wajib, right, for me to save that person's life. But at the same time, it is haram for me to enter the property of that person without permission, right? I don't know whose property this is. I don't know if I have permission. It's haram for me to enter that house and go in the swimming pool, take him out. So here, what do I say? Oh, I'll just let him die because it's haram. I'm committing a haram act by entering this property. Or no, I say, this haram becomes halal because saving another person's life is more important. There is conflict here. If I save this person's life, I did a wajib. If I don't, obviously I've left a haram. So if I save his life, I will be doing haram and the wajib. We can't. One act can't be both haram and wajib. So we said we have to give the priority to the more important one. Which is more important? Not trespassing into someone's property or saving someone's life. Of course, saving someone's life. Any person will tell you, go enter that person's yard, enter his property and save that guy's life because saving someone's life is more important than any other law. So we give priority to the more important law. The same principle, we apply it to organ donation. We have two laws. Do not violate the sanctity of this Muslim. Don't touch my body, it's haram. But on the other hand, we have to save the life of that second Muslim. It's wajib. These two come into conflict, we prioritize the more important one, and that we have to save the life of that Muslim. And that's why these ulama say that what? These ulama say that we have to take the organ of this Muslim and give it to the other Muslim. Because saving his life is more important than not violating his sanctity.
With the case of, this person's life, another person's life is in danger, would that trump the hurma of the body?
Yes. If another Muslim's life depends on it, then yes, that would trump, that would overwhelm, the importance of the importance of the sanctity of his body.
Okay, but not for non-Muslims, even good non-Muslims who are
yes. So
military, not even Hakim al-Ta'i,
yes. So these ulama, what they have said, and by the way, Sayyid al-Sistani and the Sayyid al-Khu'i, both they are proponents of this second view. You can only donate to a Muslim if his life depends on it. So why do they say, okay, we understood only if his life depends on it, but why do they say a Muslim? So these ulama have said, look, even a non-Muslim's life is important, right? Saving his life is important. But is it more important than violating the sanctity of a Muslim? We don't know. A Muslim's life is more important. It will trump, it will overwhelm, it will be more important than violating the sanctity of, this haram, violating the sanctity of this Muslim. But saving a kafir's life is important. But even if it involves violating the sanctity of another Muslim, we don't know. He's not saying no, we don't know. As long as we don't know, we cannot take this body organ and give it to that kafir. Sorry, we know your life is important, you kafir. We wish we could save you, but the only way we could save you is if we go and cut up the body of a Muslim, and that's haram. And we don't know if Allah has given us that permission. We don't know if saving your life is more important than violating the sanctity of a mu'min, of a Muslim. Because remember, these two are in conflict. So we said we prioritize the more important one. If it's the life of a Muslim, it does overcome this haram. But if it's a life of a kafir, they say we don't know. As long as we don't know, we have no authority to do it. So this is the first justification, the first argument of the ulama that say you can only donate an organ to a Muslim if his life depends on it. So to quickly summarize, our body is an amana from Allah. Once we're alive, we can do whatever we want with it. After we die, we can't. So I can't just donate something to someone without their consent. So why, when someone's life depends on it, we can? If that person is a Muslim, because the saving the life of the Muslim is more important than the sanctity of the dead Muslim. Now that's the first justification that they have given. They have a second justification, but I think time is up and this will take a couple of minutes. Inshallah, I will go over it and mention it in the second class. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.